if you're like me, many of you out there are feeling a little bit of sadness this week because Merv Griffin passed on Monday. And for many of us, Merv was a great inspiration and a great role model and a great teacher. At least I know he was that for me. Mr. Rogers, Merv. And didn't you feel like he was part of your neighborhood and family? I remember running home from school to watch, what is that? Dark Shadows, and then Merv. And he was always just so filled with enthusiasm. And he was, we could really learn a lot from him because he was such a good listener. And how many people do you know in your life who are really good listeners? And he always put the spotlight on his guests or the person in the front row. It didn't matter. He treated the people in the front row just like he did the celebrities. There was really no difference. He just had a way of elevating people. He listened. He cared. He really cared about what your response was. You know, it's very special to have someone in your life who cares about you, your interests, what you have to say, and can give you the room to tell your story. And that's what Merv did. He was the forerunner to YouTube, where everybody's sharing their stories. But anyway, you know, it's wonderful to have somebody in your life who's consistently encouraging, and he was that. I know people made fun of him. Even Johnny Carson made fun of him, and you know, because Merv would always go, "Ooh," you know, somebody would say something, and Merv would go, "Ooh, ooh." And then Johnny on the evening show, he would make fun of Merv and go, "Ooh, ooh." But they actually had a lot of affection for each other. But anyway, it was interesting to watch Merv because I was a stutterer, and all the way through elementary school, I was in awe of anyone who could have a conversation with anybody, especially strangers, people they never met. Because I couldn't speak, I would stutter, I knew all the spelling words, but I couldn't spell out loud. I'd try to walk to school, and I'd have to walk across the street if anyone was coming in my direction because my hands would start to sweat, and my heart would just felt like it was like, you know, it was out of control, and I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And I just was bound and determined to overcome that sense of feeling like a prisoner in my own body. And you'd see all the popular kids talking to each other and so fluidly communicating with each other and with the teacher, and I'd go, how do they do that? So I'd watch Merv. I took notes. I took notes on Johnny, Michael Douglas, Dick Cavett, even the Galloping Gourmet. I got a book out of the library from Barbara Walters. I think it was called How to Talk to Anybody About Anything. And I had the commitment that when I went into high school, that I would somehow dissolve this fear of speaking. And I know out there, I guess in the United States, they say that's the biggest fear. And the top fear in the nation is speaking in front of crowds. And so, you know, rather than math or geography, Merv was my mentor and my teacher. And I had the opportunity to thank him years later when I was 18. I was made in the Carmel Valley, and Arthur and Catherine Murray were our guests. And they said, could you come and pick us up at our friend's house in Carmel? We're going to go out there for the afternoon, have dinner. And so this waiter who was there for the summer from England, John Pepper and I went to Carmel to pick up Catherine and Arthur Murray. And it was the evening after the dinner hour. The door opened in this beautiful home. And opening the door was David Soul, Starsky and Hutch. And I'm going, oh my God, Twilight Zone. And he said, well, come on in. And right behind him, I see Merv Griffin. I go, ooh, this is really the Twilight Zone. This is, you know, I'm like, you know, what's happening here? And Merv goes, well, come on in. There's more dessert, and Catherine and Arthur are just sitting down to the dessert, and you're welcome to join us. And as he just kind of, you know, went off to the side, you know, his view had been blocking Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood was sitting in a chair in front of the fireplace. Little did I know that the next day, which was, I guess, a Monday, he would have all the numbers on a film that was just coming out. I don't know if it was his first film that he directed or what, but he was the expected father. And Merv was the gracious host. And I was holding this half-inflated basketball that had been on the sidewalk coming in, and we all kind of played with it and had fun and goofed around. But, he just treated us like royalty. My heart just went out to him, and I just was like, gee, he's just normal folk. Wow, amazing. Here I am having dessert with Catherine and Arthur Murray and David Soul and Lynn Martin. Just, wow. But he was just ever so sweet and kind, and, I think that most of you out there would go, gee, what would Merv be like if I met him? And he wouldn't be any different than what you see on TV, just, except he'd probably ask you a question and they go, ooh, ooh, when you told your story. And years later when I went to LA and lived in Benedict Canyon, he moved to Benedict Canyon. He was my neighbor down the street and bought the Beverly Hilton. But, despite all the trappings, we're all just neighbors. And I think that's what you're feeling. You think, God, is it strange to feel this way about somebody you've never met? Well, that's not true. You've met him. You've experienced him. He's in your neighborhood. Not in your neighborhood, but your living room. Yes, your neighborhood. So it's not crazy to feel that way. And it's not crazy to express your love and your feeling, whether it's sad feelings. Gosh, I feel sad because I just feel sad. He feels like a family member or a neighbor. And, I think we need to share our stories. And I remember when Johnny Carson died and I walked up the street. I'd been living in LA and I moved back into the neighborhood I grew up in. And Mr. O'Sullivan, who still had his Irish accent after 50 years, he's like, oh, I felt like Johnny was my neighbor. And he said, I'm so sad that happened. And I said, yeah. And I've known Mr. O'Sullivan, all my life, and he's a great neighbor. And I said, yeah. I said, I don't think that's crazy to think that way, that, that you felt like he was a friend and a neighbor. And I said, actually, he was my neighbor in Malibu. He lived across the street from me, and he was very supportive and actually helped me and encouraged me to create my own business. But I think, and I had a chance to thank him too. That's another long story, because he really impacted me so much and helped me start my company. Not with money, just with his belief in me when I didn't have it for myself. And that's special. I think that's what Merv conveyed too. You could see that he believed in you. He gave you space to tell your story. He honored you. And even though he was on television, he was in your neighborhood, in your living room, and he did care about what you had to say. And you could see that through the way he listened to everybody else, and the way he treated everybody else. And isn't that a gift? That's the greatest gift he gives us. Kindness, thoughtfulness. And how are we going to treat each other? And how are we going to treat our neighbors and people we don't know? That is a gift. That's the gift that Merv gives all of us. Love, thoughtfulness, kindness, and enthusiasm. What would happen if we put God in all our experiences? Enthusiasm. In God. Enthusiasm. I love that word. From now on, that's Merv's word. Every time I hear that, I'm going to think of Merv, especially now that he's an angel. So I guess he's coming into everybody's living room again, just from another place. So my love and my prayers go out to Merv's family, and my love and appreciation are always there for you, Merv. Thank you so much, and God bless.